it's not often that when you play a game, even very early on, that you can just say to yourself, this is a 10, this is a masterpiece. But God of War, from very early on in the game, all the way now through completion, is that game. It's one of the best games I've ever played. And I think that's saying a lot because this is a great series and I've never thought about that from any other of the games. The PlayStation 2 games were awesome, especially for the time, graphically and from a combat standpoint. They were fun and really more of an arcade style now that you look back on it, even though it was a fairly complex combat system. But every iteration has just gotten better, and I think, you know, one of the things that the new games do, when I call it, say, the new games, I mean the 2008 PS4 version and this version, is that the story is just on steroids comparatively. And I don't mean that from like an action movie standpoint, oh, the set pieces, and I mean, it just tells such a good story, something that you really care about and something that drives the characters, but also you as the player to want to see it out, to figure out what, you know, whether it's a mystery or just, hey, what's going to happen with these characters. And I think there is a parallel here, or a comparison rather, with The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2, in that you can deeply care so much for some of these characters that that's what's so much more lasting. It's not the excellent gameplay, which is excellent, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it is how you care about these characters. And similarly, like The Last of Us Part 2, there are some other gameplay elements and character perspectives that really change the way you can feel about them. Not that you wouldn't have a good feel about them just based on one perspective, you know, Kratos, coming from Kratos, but when you get some of the other perspectives from these other characters, it makes you more in tune with them, whether that's liking them more or hating them more or seeing their sides of things that you may not have seen before. Again, similar to The Last of Us Part 2. It really makes any encounters between the two, conflicts, for lack of a better term, team-ups, those relationships just mean that much more. And I think that's actually ultimately what drives the combat to me much better, because you're not just fighting necessarily in a video game, but you're fighting for something that the character is motivated to do. Now, even though that's the best part of the game, and I think it's better in this version than it was in 2018, but of course that was the base for all of this. The gameplay is really what gets most people to play video games, and I'm happy to say that this is probably the best action-oriented combat, especially if you like something that's not necessarily like a Bayonetta or a Yakuza. Like it's hard to say this is more serious, but it is more grounded in the sense of it's just not goofy, I think is the way to say it. But it is excellent, and you know, you have to use everything at your disposal, different weapons, using to know when to use them against specific enemies that have weaknesses, or also just chaining together certain moves, including your kind of special type moves. In addition, I think one of the big gripes I had about the 2008 God of War was that it was very difficult to traverse, or at least it was cumbersome. And this game makes it so much easier just to get to where you want to go. And then finally, graphically, 2018 looked great, especially on the PS5 version. But if you just see here, this version is absolutely gorgeous, and I think at first on the surface it doesn't look that much better than the PS5 update of the 2008 game, but as you continue to play it, everything gets better and more detailed. I think that was a conscious choice, and it just starts to blow you out of the water. The only reason you just wouldn't like this game if it wasn't your type, but this is a 10.
At least the whole realm hasn't fallen to predators and occupiers.